My name is Detective James Monk, and in my 24 years with the Coconino County Sheriff's Department in Arizona, I had never encountered a case that would challenge my understanding of family dynamics, quite like the disappearance of Rachel Martinez at the Grand Canyon. It was a sweltering August morning when we received the call about a missing 22-year-old college student who had allegedly fallen to her demise during what was supposed to be a father-daughter bonding trip to one of America's most iconic landmarks. Her father, Robert Martinez, sat in our interview room 3 hours after reporting the incident, his hands steady as he recounted how his daughter had slipped while taking photos near the South Rim overlook at Mather Point. According to his statement, Rachel had been leaning over the safety barrier to capture the perfect sunrise shot when she lost her balance and fell into the canyon's depths below. What immediately struck me as unusual was not just Robert's remarkably calm demeanor while describing such a traumatic event, but the small detail our forensic team discovered during the routine inspection of his rental vehicle. Hidden deep within the air conditioning vent on the passenger side was a single fingernail, painted with the same distinctive purple polish that Rachel had been wearing when she disappeared. The presence of that fingernail in such an unusual location would transform our investigation from a tragic accident into something far more sinister. Robert Martinez had driven up from Phoenix with his daughter for what he described as a special celebration of Rachel's recent graduation from Arizona State University, where she had earned her degree in environmental science with plans to work for the National Park Service. The 48-year-old construction supervisor had recently gone through a difficult separation from Rachel's mother, and according to his initial statement, this trip was meant to repair their strained relationship and discuss Rachel's future career plans. They had arrived at the South Rim Visitor Center around 6 in the morning, hoping to catch the sunrise from one of the most popular viewpoints in the park. Robert claimed that Rachel had been excited about the trip and had brought her professional camera equipment to document their experience together. He described her as an experienced hiker who was comfortable around heights and familiar with outdoor safety protocols from her environmental studies program. However, witnesses in the hotel lobby the night before their tragedy recalled hearing raised voices coming from their adjoining rooms, suggesting that the father-daughter relationship might not have been as harmonious as Robert initially portrayed. The hotel staff noted that Rachel had requested a separate room from her father, an unusual arrangement for what was supposed to be a reconciliation trip. The initial response to Robert's report of a fall involved immediate deployment of the park's technical rescue team, though the chances of survival from such a significant height were essentially zero. Search and rescue helicopters were dispatched to scan the canyon depths for any sign of Rachel's body, while park rangers secured the area around Mather Point and began interviewing witnesses who might have observed the alleged incident. The Grand Canyon's vast scale and numerous ledges and outcropping made body recovery operations extremely challenging, requiring specialized equipment and experienced technical climbers who could safely navigate the treacherous terrain. Robert's description of the fall location was specific enough to focus initial search efforts, though no witnesses could be found who had actually seen Rachel go over the edge during the early morning hours when the incident supposedly occurred. Park officials noted that the area around Mather Point was equipped with safety barriers specifically designed to prevent accidental falls, making Robert's account of how Rachel had managed to slip particularly puzzling. The morning had been calm, with no wind or weather conditions that might have contributed to a loss of balance. Search teams found Rachel's camera bag near the overlook, but the expensive camera equipment that Robert claimed she had been using was nowhere to be found, adding another inconsistency to his version of events. Rachel Martinez's background revealed a bright, ambitious young woman who had overcome significant family challenges to excel academically and pursue her passion for environmental conservation. Her professors at Arizona State described her as a dedicated student who had maintained excellent grades while working part-time to support herself through college. Friends and classmates characterized Rachel as cautious and safety-conscious, particularly when it came to outdoor activities, making the idea of a careless accident seem inconsistent with her personality. Her social media posts from the weeks leading up to the Grand Canyon trip showed excitement about her upcoming graduation and job interviews with various environmental organizations, but also revealed ongoing stress about her parents' separation and her father's increasing financial demands. Text messages recovered from her phone indicated that she had been reluctant to take the trip with Robert, confiding to friends that she was concerned about his recent behavior and drinking habits. Her mother, Rachel Martinez, provided investigators with information about Robert's history of domestic disputes and financial problems that had contributed to their separation. Eleanor revealed that Rachel had been planning to move to Colorado for a position with the Forest Service and had been trying to distance herself from her father's influence and control over her life decisions. The discovery of Rachel's fingernail in Robert's rental car vent fundamentally altered the direction of our investigation and raised serious questions about his account of her disappearance. The fingernail showed signs of having been torn off forcibly, with traces of skin and blood that suggested it had been removed during a struggle rather than through normal breakage. Forensic analysis confirmed that the nail polish matched samples from Rachel's personal belongings, and DNA testing verified that it belonged to her. The location where the fingernail was found, deep within the air conditioning system, indicated that it had been deliberately hidden or had become lodged there during a violent confrontation inside the vehicle. The car's interior showed signs of recent cleaning with commercial-grade cleaners, though luminol testing revealed traces of blood that had not been completely removed from several surfaces. Most significantly, the passenger seat showed evidence of having been moved and readjusted, suggesting that someone had attempted to clean or remove evidence from that area of the vehicle. Robert's explanation that Rachel might have lost the fingernail while adjusting the air conditioning seemed implausible given the nail's location and the physical evidence of force required to remove it. The timeline of when the nail might have entered the vent system became crucial, as it would indicate whether Rachel had been injured before or after arriving at the Grand Canyon overlook. Robert Martinez's behavior during subsequent interviews revealed inconsistencies and defensive responses that raised additional suspicions about his involvement in Rachel's disappearance. When confronted with the fingernail evidence, he became agitated and began changing details of his story about their morning activities and the sequence of events leading up to the alleged fall. His initial claim that Rachel had been taking photographs was contradicted by the absence of her camera and the fact that the found camera bag contained only basic equipment rather than the professional gear he had described. Robert's financial records revealed significant gambling debts and recent large cash withdrawals that he could not adequately explain, suggesting possible desperation that might have motivated him to harm his daughter. Phone records showed that he had made several calls to unknown numbers during the night before the trip, calls that he claimed were work-related, but could not provide specific details about when pressed. His employment history revealed a pattern of anger management issues and conflicts with supervisors that had resulted in several job changes over the past few years. Former co-workers described Robert as someone with a quick temper who became particularly agitated when questioned about his personal life or financial situation. The separation from his wife had apparently been triggered by domestic violence incidents that Elena had reported to police, though she had ultimately declined to press charges in hopes of preserving the family relationship for Rachel's sake. The search for Rachel's body in the Grand Canyon continued for 5 days with increasingly sophisticated equipment and techniques, though the vast scale of the canyon and numerous inaccessible areas made a comprehensive search nearly impossible. Technical rescue teams rappelled down cliff faces and explored ledges where a body might have come to rest after a fall from the rim, while search dogs were deployed in areas accessible by hiking trails. Helicopter crews used thermal imaging and high-resolution cameras to scan areas that could not be reached by ground teams, though the canyon's depth and numerous hiding spots limited the effectiveness of aerial searches. Local climbing experts familiar with the Grand Canyon's geography were consulted about the most likely areas where someone falling from Mather Point might end up, helping to focus search efforts on areas with the highest probability of success. Despite these extensive efforts, no trace of Rachel's body was found, leading investigators to question whether she had actually fallen into the canyon at all. The absence of any physical evidence supporting Robert's account of a fall, combined with the suspicious fingernail discovery, suggested that Rachel's fate might have been very different from what her father had claimed. Search teams noted that the canyon's numerous caves, overhangs, and hidden areas could potentially conceal evidence for years, making definitive conclusions difficult based on the physical search alone. Rachel's personal belongings found in the hotel room provided additional insights into her state of mind and relationship with her father during their final trip together. Her journal entries from the days leading up to the Grand Canyon visit revealed increasing anxiety about her father's behavior and concerns about his financial stability. She had written about feeling pressured to move back home after graduation to help support Robert financially, a situation that conflicted with her own career goals and desire for independence. Text messages to friends indicated that she had been considering not taking the trip at all, but had ultimately decided to go in hopes of having a serious conversation with her father about boundaries and her future plans. Her luggage contained job application materials and apartment rental information for Colorado, supporting her mother's account that Rachel had been planning to leave Arizona permanently. Personal items in her backpack included pepper spray and a small emergency whistle, suggesting that she had some concerns about her safety even before the trip began. Most significantly, investigators found a sealed letter addressed to her mother in Rachel's belongings, marked, "To be opened if something happens to me," which contained detailed accounts of her father's increasingly erratic behavior and veiled threats about what he might do if she moved away from Arizona. The investigation expanded to include examination of Robert Martinez's activities and whereabouts during the hours surrounding Rachel's disappearance, revealing several inconsistencies in his timeline and additional suspicious circumstances. Security footage from the Grand Canyon Visitor Center showed Robert arriving alone in his rental car around 7:30 in the morning, approximately 90 minutes later than he had claimed in his initial statement. The footage clearly showed only one person in the vehicle, contradicting his story that Rachel had been with him when they arrived at the park. Gas station receipts found in Robert's wallet indicated that he had stopped for fuel at a location 50 miles south of the Grand Canyon at 6:15 that morning, a detour that made no sense if he had been traveling directly from their hotel. Cell phone tower data placed Robert's phone in that same area during the early morning hours, supporting the receipt evidence but raising questions about what he had been doing there and why he had lied about his movements. Witness interviews revealed that hotel staff had seen Robert loading items into his car alone around 5 in the morning, with no sign of Rachel accompanying him. The hotel's keycard system showed that Rachel's room had not been accessed after 11 the previous evening, suggesting that she might have been incapacitated or prevented from leaving her room. These timeline discrepancies, combined with the physical evidence found in the rental car, began to paint a picture of premeditation rather than a spontaneous tragedy at the canyon rim. The forensic analysis of the rental car revealed additional evidence that supported the theory that Rachel had been harmed before arriving at the Grand Canyon, making the alleged fall story seem increasingly implausible. Blood spatter analysis indicated that someone had been injured while seated in the passenger seat, with patterns consistent with facial or head trauma rather than minor cuts from a broken fingernail. The car's GPS system retained data showing that Robert had driven to several remote locations during the night before Rachel's reported disappearance, including areas known for their isolation and lack of surveillance cameras. Soil samples from the car's tires matched earth compositions from those remote locations, providing physical evidence that the vehicle had been driven off paved roads during the time frame in question. The trunk area showed signs of having been recently cleaned with bleach and other chemical cleaners, though luminol testing still revealed traces of biological material that appeared to be blood. Fiber evidence collected from various surfaces in the car matched clothing that Rachel had been wearing, but the distribution pattern suggested that she had been moved while unconscious or deceased, rather than sitting normally in the passenger seat. Robert's fingerprints were found throughout the vehicle as expected, but Rachel's prints were notably absent from areas where a conscious passenger would normally touch, such as door handles, seat adjustment controls, and air conditioning vents. The psychological profile developed by behavioral analysts painted a picture of Robert Martinez as a man facing multiple life stressors who might have reached a breaking point that led to violence against his daughter. His history of domestic disputes, financial problems, and control issues suggested someone who might react poorly to losing influence over family members. The separation from his wife had apparently triggered increased anxiety about losing his relationship with Rachel as well, particularly as she prepared to move to another state for her career. Expert analysis of Robert's behavior during interviews revealed classic signs of deception, including changes in verbal patterns when discussing specific details about the morning Rachel disappeared. His emotional responses seemed calculated rather than genuine, with tears and distress appearing at convenient moments rather than emerging naturally during difficult topics. The deliberate nature of his cleaning efforts in the rental car suggested planning and awareness of guilt rather than the behavior of someone who had witnessed a tragic accident. Behavioral experts noted that his consistent attempts to portray Rachel's disappearance as her own fault or the result of her carelessness were consistent with domestic violence patterns where perpetrators blame victims for their own actions. The case against Robert Martinez was strengthened by the discovery of additional physical evidence that had initially been overlooked during the preliminary investigation of Rachel's hotel room. Crime scene technicians found traces of Rachel's blood on towels that had been placed in the hotel laundry hamper, towels that Robert claimed to have used for showering, but which showed blood patterns inconsistent with normal use. Hair samples recovered from the bathroom drain were later determined to belong to Rachel and showed signs of having been forcibly removed from her scalp. The hotel room's air conditioning unit contained fibers that matched Rachel's clothing, suggesting that her body or clothing had been in contact with the unit during the night before her reported disappearance. Room service records indicated that Robert had ordered dinner for 2 people the evening before, but hotel staff later reported that only 1 meal appeared to have been consumed when they cleaned the room. Security footage from the hotel hallways was reviewed more carefully, revealing that Robert had made multiple trips to his car during the early morning hours, carrying what appeared to be heavy bags or bundles. These discoveries provided a clearer picture of what had likely happened to Rachel during her final night alive and supported the theory that her body had been removed from the hotel and disposed of before Robert drove to the Grand Canyon to establish his alibi. The interrogation of Robert Martinez entered its final phase as investigators presented him with the overwhelming physical evidence that contradicted his story about Rachel's accidental fall at the Grand Canyon. Faced with the fingernail evidence, blood traces, timeline inconsistencies, and hotel room discoveries, Robert's demeanor changed dramatically from cooperative grief to defensive anger. His legal representation advised him to stop answering questions, but the evidence collected during the investigation provided a strong foundation for prosecution without requiring a confession. The district attorney's office decided to file charges for first-degree murder, citing the evidence of premeditation and planning that had been revealed through the forensic investigation. Robert's motive appeared to be related to his fear of losing control over Rachel as she prepared to start her independent life in Colorado, combined with his desperate financial situation and history of domestic violence. The deliberate disposal of Rachel's body in a location where it might never be found was seen as an attempt to avoid accountability and continue collecting benefits from insurance policies that named him as beneficiary. Rachel's mother, Elena, provided victim impact statements describing the devastating effect of losing her daughter and the additional trauma of learning that Rachel's own father had been responsible for her disappearance. The trial of Robert Martinez attracted significant media attention due to the unusual circumstances of the case and the compelling forensic evidence that had unraveled his deception. The prosecution's case relied heavily on the physical evidence collected from the rental car, hotel room, and Robert's own inconsistent statements about the events surrounding Rachel's disappearance. Expert witnesses testified about the forensic significance of the fingernail found in the car vent, the blood evidence, and the timeline discrepancies that proved Robert had lied about crucial details of his story. The defense attempted to argue that the evidence was circumstantial and that Rachel could have been injured in ways that didn't involve her father, but the totality of the evidence made alternative explanations difficult to support. Character witnesses for Rachel described her as a careful, intelligent young woman who would not have taken unnecessary risks at the Grand Canyon, undermining Robert's portrayal of her as careless. Elena Martinez's testimony about Robert's history of domestic violence and control issues provided context for understanding his possible motives for harming Rachel. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all charges, apparently convinced by the scientific evidence and Robert's own contradictory statements. The sentencing phase of Robert Martinez's trial provided an opportunity for family members and friends to speak about Rachel's life and the impact of her loss on everyone who had known and loved her. Elena described her daughter as a bright light who had overcome numerous challenges to pursue her dreams of environmental conservation and public service. Rachel's professors and classmates testified about her dedication to protecting natural resources and her excitement about contributing to conservation efforts through her career with the Forest Service. Friends shared memories of Rachel's kindness, intelligence, and determination to make a positive difference in the world through her environmental work. The judge noted the particularly heinous nature of Robert's crime, emphasizing that he had not only taken his daughter's life, but had attempted to compound the family's grief by making them believe she had died in a tragic accident. The sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole reflected both the severity of the crime and the extensive planning and deception that Robert had employed to try to escape accountability. Rachel's body was never recovered, despite continued search efforts in areas where investigators believed Robert might have disposed of it, leaving her family without the closure of a proper burial. The aftermath of Rachel Martinez's case led to important changes in how missing person investigations are conducted in national parks, particularly when family members are involved in reporting disappearances. The Grand Canyon National Park Service implemented enhanced evidence collection protocols for all reported accidents and disappearances, ensuring that potential crime scenes are properly preserved until foul play can be definitively ruled out. Training programs for park rangers now include instruction on recognizing signs of domestic violence and understanding the dynamics that might lead family members to harm loved ones in isolated settings. The case also highlighted the importance of thorough forensic examination of vehicles and personal belongings in missing person cases, even when the circumstances initially appear to support accidental death or disappearance. Rachel's story became part of training materials for law enforcement agencies throughout Arizona, demonstrating how careful attention to physical evidence and inconsistencies in witness statements can reveal the truth behind carefully constructed deceptions. Rachel Martinez established the Rachel Martinez Environmental Foundation to honor her daughter's memory and continue her commitment to conservation work in national parks and wilderness areas. The foundation provides scholarships for students pursuing environmental science degrees and funds research projects focused on protecting the natural resources that Rachel had been passionate about preserving. Annual memorial hikes at the Grand Canyon raise funds for the foundation while providing opportunities for Rachel's friends and family to remember her love of the outdoors and her dedication to environmental protection. The foundation also supports domestic violence prevention programs, recognizing that Rachel's death was ultimately the result of family violence that could potentially be prevented through education and intervention services. Elena's advocacy work has helped pass legislation strengthening penalties for domestic violence cases involving family members and improving support services for victims trying to escape abusive relationships. The investigation into Rachel Martinez's disappearance served as a reminder that even in iconic locations like the Grand Canyon, where millions of visitors come to experience natural beauty and wonder, human tragedy and violence can intrude in the most unexpected ways. The case demonstrated the importance of maintaining professional skepticism even when investigating reported accidents, particularly when physical evidence doesn't align with witness accounts. For investigators, Rachel's case became a textbook example of how scientific evidence and careful analysis could reveal the truth behind even carefully planned deceptions. The fingernail found in Robert's rental car vent remained a powerful symbol of how small physical evidence could unravel elaborate cover-up attempts and provide justice for victims who could no longer speak for themselves. Rachel's memory lived on through the conservation work supported by her foundation and the improved investigative techniques that her case had helped develop, ensuring that her passion for protecting others would continue even after her life had been tragically cut short by the person who should have protected her most. The conviction of Robert Martinez marked the end of one of the most complex and emotionally challenging cases in Coconino County's history. Though the ripple effects of Rachel's story continued to influence law enforcement practices and family safety awareness throughout Arizona and beyond, the case became a cornerstone example in criminal justice training programs, demonstrating how seemingly minor physical evidence could unravel elaborate deceptions and reveal the truth behind carefully constructed alibis. Law enforcement agencies across the Southwest adopted enhanced protocols for investigating reported accidents involving family members, recognizing that domestic situations could escalate to tragic outcomes even in public settings like national parks. The forensic techniques developed during Rachel's investigation, particularly the analysis of trace evidence in vehicle ventilation systems, became standard procedure for missing person cases where foul play was suspected but not immediately apparent. Rachel's legacy lived on through the environmental conservation work she had been passionate about, as her foundation grew to support dozens of students pursuing careers in park service and environmental protection throughout the American Southwest. Her story inspired a new generation of young environmentalists who were determined to honor her memory by protecting the natural spaces she had loved so deeply. The Grand Canyon National Park established the Rachel Martinez Memorial Trail, a short educational loop that taught visitors about both environmental conservation and personal safety awareness. Elena Martinez became a powerful advocate for domestic violence prevention, speaking at universities and community centers about recognizing warning signs of controlling behavior and the importance of seeking help before situations escalate to irreversible consequences. Her message resonated particularly strongly with young women entering college and beginning their independent adult lives, helping them understand that family relationships should support, rather than restrict, their personal growth and career aspirations. As I reflect on Rachel Martinez's case years later, it serves as a stark reminder that the people we trust most can sometimes pose the greatest threats to our safety and well-being. The investigation challenged every assumption about family bonds and parental love, revealing how financial desperation and controlling behavior could transform a father into his daughter's greatest enemy. The precision required to uncover the truth behind Robert's elaborate deception reinforced my belief in the importance of thorough, scientific investigation techniques that rely on physical evidence rather than emotional appeals or family relationships. Rachel's bright future in environmental conservation was tragically cut short, but her impact on investigative procedures and family safety awareness ensured that her dedication to protecting others continued long after her life ended. The case remained a touchstone in my career, reminding me that justice for victims often depends on the careful analysis of seemingly insignificant details that reveal the larger truth about human nature and the lengths some people will go to avoid accountability for their actions.